It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso, right here on S3. Now, news that shocked the world. On the 6th of February, southeast Turkey and northern Syria experienced an earthquake with a magnitude of 7.8. And this tragedy left 1,000 dead or trapped under the rubble, calling on the world to assist with rescuing civilians. Just 2 weeks later, a second earthquake of a magnitude of 6.4 hit on February the 21st. Now, we heard the call, and South Africa's very own rescue teams, the Gift of the Givers Foundation, along with the South African Police Services K9 unit, were able to help. Now, unpacking this natural disaster with us today is UCT's Department of Geological Sciences, Dr. Alistair Sloan, as well as one of the first respondents for the disaster Gift of the Givers team member, Roina Gewala. Dr. Sloan, Roina, thank you very much for joining us this morning on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. This was undoubtedly, I think, one of the worst, natural disasters that could have hit this year. And we've seen the news headlines, we've seen the devastation. And I want to start off with you, Dr. Sloan. To unpack just an earthquake, what exactly is it? How do we classify this? And also, Turkey is deemed to be in an earthquake zone, also called, sitting in a triple junction, as I said. So how do we unpack that with regards to fault lines and tectonic plates?
Sure, absolutely, no problem. So the earthquake happened in an area which is very kind of tectonically complex. So you can think of the tectonic plates as being relatively strong, rigid areas which are moving relative to each other. In that area, we have the African plate, which is moving northwards. We have the Arabian plate, which is moving northwards slightly faster. And in front of them, we have the Anatolian block. So that basically consists of Turkey and a little bit of land around it. And that Anatolian block is being pushed out sideways to the west by these plates moving northwards. So the earthquake itself ruptured both a section of the plate boundary, which is in between the Arabian plate and this Anatolian block, and then also a section of the boundary between the Arabian plate and the African plate as well. So it actually kind of ruptured through the triple junction. The rupture was over 300 kilometers long. So this is a very long section of fault which failed. And as these plates move relative to each other, they cause the weaker zones in between them to gradually store elastic strain. So they're basically bending the rock within those zones. So with this particular case, the fault zone is often called the East Anatolian Fault. And that's gradually bending, gradually accumulating strain at about 1.5 centimeters per year. So that's building up and up over years and years until there's enough stored strain to overcome the strength of the rocks. They fail, it breaks, and all of that energy is released in a very short space of time. And the maximum amount of slip which happened in the earthquake was around 10 meters in some places. So you've built all of that up year after year after year, and then you release that energy in this sudden cataclysmic event with the terrible, terrible consequences that we've seen.
And that is huge amounts of force. I don't think we can comprehend it. I mean, we're talking about, the earth being alive under our feet. It is moving constantly, and, these things, like you said, are bound to happen at some point. But yet, we're living on it. Roina, Gift of the Givers jumped in both feet, doing incredible work. We've seen, like I've mentioned, on the news headlines, the footage, the pictures of people in dire circumstances. What was it like when Gift of the Givers first arrived on the scene?
I'd just like to start with, like you mentioned, you've seen it on social media, you're seeing all these videos being released and pictures, but it does not even come close to the devastation on the ground. I think getting there safely, we had a safe journey with Turkish Airlines, which were amazing in getting us to the scene as soon as possible. There was no time being wasted, and we were deployed pretty soon, within hours after the earthquake had happened. And upon arrival, we were part of the first groups to have arrived to the earthquake scene, and we were deployed to Antakya, which had 90% devastation. Getting there, mass destruction, mass devastation, mass loss of life, and a lot of unstable instability going around. So entering the site in the beginning was extremely tough. you know, you are boots on the ground and you want to get in there and assist as soon as possible, especially being faced with it. However, we needed to take the time to do some recon and actually assess where it's viable and safe for us to enter, as we do not want to enter and, you know, sort of been taken out of the system with any loss or injuries. And that had taken us about 2 days before actually being able to enter. And we started off and made alliance with the Turkish team, and we hit boots on the ground on about day 3.
And you know what, apart from dealing with the devastation and having to work your way through it, the climate, you know, was also not favorable. It was very cold. It made your work very, very hard. We're going to be back with you guys in just a second. Thank you very much for joining us on your Feel Good Breakfast Show this morning. Lots more to talk about with Dr. Sloan and Royna still coming up.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show Expresso right here on S3, your home. Now, earthquakes are unpredictable due to the complexity of fault systems on the Earth's crust, which has not allowed scientists to explore viable methods in which to predict these natural disasters. Now, after the original earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria, 2 more were experienced, and both countries experienced more than 200 aftershocks. Now, unpacking this natural disaster with us this morning is UCT's Department of Geological Sciences, Dr. Alistair Sloan, as well as one of the first respondents for the disaster, Gift of the Givers team member, Royna Gewala. Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Let's quickly pick up where we left off. You guys got in there, some of the first on the scene. Despite the fact that there was complete devastation, the weather played such a difficult role in making you able to execute your job.
It was difficult, however, there was a silver lining that we never experienced snow in Antakya itself. So that helped a lot with regards to providing after slides, being able to enter into an already unstable environment with some stability. Snow would obviously add the risk of a slippery area to enter. However, the cold also, I think, largely helped the survivors that had been there for an extended period of time. The cold prevented sweating, the dehydration process slower, etc. And I think that is why a lot of the miracle cases getting a lot of the live recoveries later on in the process, up to 10 days later, had actually played a large role in keeping and sustaining life for that long.
We saw some fantastic stories coming out of people that were rescued under threatening and life kind of threatening circumstances, babies that were born under rubble. But there was also a story where you guys were involved with the canine unit of an 8-year-old woman.
Vital in locating the 8-year-old female. So we had the canines enter the specific scene, and we had one of the canines locate life. At the time, we didn't know if the patient was live or deceased. We had a second canine go in, and they had confirmed that life was there. In conjunction with the Omani team, Gift of the Givers had entered, taken away the rubble, and had been able to save the 8-year-old. She was dehydrated, but for the most part done really well considering the circumstances, which was an amazing experience.
We applaud you for the incredible work. We mentioned aftershocks, Dr. Sloan, more than 200 aftershocks. Is that a lot? Is that normal? What exactly is an aftershock, and what could they cause potentially as well?
So an aftershock is basically another earthquake which happens after the main shock, the first earthquake. And these aftershocks are basically releasing stresses which were set up by the main shock. And 200 aftershocks, or even far more after an earthquake of this magnitude, is normal. So they're something that we always see after an event of this magnitude. And in general, they can be up to around just below 1 unit of magnitude below the main shock. So if you have a 7.8, then you're going to get some high magnitude 6 aftershocks, which are significant earthquakes in their own right. And so that's one of the reasons that the first responders are so courageous, because they're going into this situation with unstable structures, knowing that these types of events are quite likely to happen in the days after a major event. And so, yeah.
Why is it so difficult to be able to predict something like an earthquake? And has there been any advances made in that field to be able to potentially kind of predict when something like this is about to happen?
So I just want to quickly make the distinction between two things. Prediction, where you can say there will be this earthquake, it's going to happen tomorrow, everybody get out of the building. And forecasting, where we can say things like this section of the East Anatolian Fault is very likely to have a magnitude 7.8 earthquake over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And that second one we can do really quite well, actually. So we are able to identify the places where the hazard is greatest and say what type of hazard. And that allows you to create building codes, to make plans, to make sure that when the event happens, the actual results are minimized. In terms of the prediction, it's a very difficult problem because actually there are earthquakes happening all the time, lots of little ones, and knowing which one is going to turn into the giant is very difficult. So sometimes there are precursors, but if you were to always evacuate, you would have many, many false alarms. And in practice, you just can't do that.
But this is why it becomes so important, I think, for countries that lies within these triple zones or fault lines to really look at their buildings, their engineering thereof, to safeguard, I suppose, as well.
Absolutely. So you need to have excellent building codes. And the building codes are only as good as the systems to enforce them and let's say, the moral character of the people who are actually implementing them. Okay? Yeah. And so that's something which is incredibly important. If you look at countries like Japan, if you look at countries like Chile, they have earthquakes like this. They have larger earthquakes than this. And buildings very rarely collapse due to earthquakes. Exactly. I'm not saying that as an attack on Turkey in any way. So buildings like that is very expensive, and you do have to balance a variety of different considerations as a government. But it's not something which is not preventable. Like, we can greatly reduce
with the technology that we have available, you know, I think more needs to be pumped into those sectors specifically. Rowena, I know that refugee camps has been set up looking after those that's, you know, lost their homes, tourists that's been in the country as well. I mean, there's so much going on. How can we help? How can the public of South Africa jump in and help the amazing work that you guys are doing?
Okay, so specifically in the areas that were largely affected with the earthquakes, there's no running water, no electricity. Obviously, the infrastructure is gone, so sleeping, tents, mattresses, warm clothing from all ages, baby to your elderly. Those are vital components at the moment that are in short supply. So if anyone has any spare, whether even it's one, don't underestimate the value that that one sleeping bag could do. And then if you go into the Gift of the Givers website, we do have a page. If you go under the disasters tab, you'll see that there's a Turkey platform that you can find their banking details. Any donations, nothing is too small. Please go onto the website and have a look at the details. If you have any specific requests or there's something that you feel you can make a difference with, you are also able to call our toll-free number, and you can engage with one of the staff that will able to assist you. Should I say the number or?
It's on our screen at the moment,
perfect.
So people can see it there.
They can please engage, and as I said, nothing is insignificant. The country has nothing, everything is gone. But those key components of running water, generators, fuel, those are things that are needed ASAP. The basics, pure basics, yes.
Dr. Sloan, thank you very much for your insights and joining us. And Rona, you and the team of Gift of the Givers for the incredible work that you guys have been doing. I don't think we can put it into words. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, unpacking it. Like Rona said, if you would like to just lend a hand, basics is what they need. Giftofthegivers.org is a website. You can check it out and donate what you can, South Africa. Let's get involved.